Good morning. Do you ever wonder why you get triggered? I've been struggling with this for so long. Why do I get triggered over these certain things out of nowhere? And what happened to that wild part of me, that playful, creative, exuberant part of me? Why am I afraid to love? Do you ever feel like that? Well, this is where parts work comes in. Parts work has to do with the fact that we have many different aspects and feelings within us, and many of them have been locked away. The ones that are locked away are called the exiles. And then we have the other parts of us that, instead of being in their natural, free state, have taken on a very harsh, burdensome role of being a protector, either managing everything or getting triggered and firefighting. What does this all really mean? So, exiles are the parts of us that we had to repress when we were children. We were punished for having them. We were told those weren't good. Maybe we got hurt and we pushed these parts away. So, after we have some trauma or attachment injury, usually in childhood, these parts of us, it could be a playful part, a sexual part, a part of us that feels awe and wonder, they absorb this injury and they shift from their fun, playful state to chronically wounded, what we call inner children, who are frozen in the past and can overwhelm us and pull us back into that dreadful scene. Because as children, we're very helpless. We don't know how to deal with these injuries, and we're not taught how to deal with these injuries. Even with the best meaning of parents, let's be honest. So what happens is that these burdens impair our ability to function in the world. So you might have also heard the term childhood emotional neglect or, wounded inner child. I mean, these are all just different aspects of that same thing. So we try to lock these parts away. And a lot of people are like, I do not want to go back into my childhood. That's in the past. I want to keep that locked away. And that's the protectors keeping us safe by keeping it locked away. But keeping it locked away is not helpful because so many parts of us are frozen in time. And that could be kind of what Carl Jung referred to as, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. So that's kind of like trying to find the hidden parts of us, the subconscious parts of us. And that really appeals. I mean, have you ever wondered, like, there's a part of me that I'm missing? Like, there's something inside of me that's missing. Like, is it God or is it a part of me? And this is where you can find a lot of the answers, is in your frozen parts. Now, when we try our best to lock these parts away, we think that we're simply moving on from bad memories, sensations, and emotions. And we're not realizing that we're really disconnecting from our most precious resources just because they got hurt. And of course, in our society, this American rugged individualism, it says that when you get hurt, pick yourself up and move on. And of course, people around us tell us, just get over it, stop being so sensitive. But for these young parts, that's just adding insult to injury, because the injury came from the event. And then we injure ourselves further by insulting these parts, abandoning them, and imprisoning them by pushing them down. So these parts become really desperate to be attended to, and they try to break out of exile any chance they get. These delightful inner children, and these exiles can be any part of you, the joyful part, the exuberant part, the risk-taking, the courage, the challenge, the fun-loving, the intellectual. Like, we have all these different parts. So these delightful inner children, he calls them inner children, they're hurt, then abandoned, and then we no longer have access to their wonderful qualities. And instead, we assume that it's part of becoming an adult to no longer feel intense joy, awe, and love. That joy, awe, and love, if you don't feel that, that's an exile. That's just an example of a part. But even though they're exiled, like I said before, and I'm kind of referring to this book here, their burdens create an unconscious effect on our self-esteem, our choice of intimate partner, career, and so on. And they're behind the overreaction that seems so mysterious to us and leave us perplexed as to why certain small things hit us so hard. I can certainly relate to that. It's very hard to grow up in the US without accumulating a number of exiles. As a child, you were most certainly hurt, humiliated, or terrified multiple times by your family, your peers, and then you were just coldly expected to just move on. If you're an abuse survivor, you're going to have a lot more exiles. The more trauma you had in your childhood, the more exiles you're going to have. So some people are just privileged to have fewer exiles, and some people just have a lot of them, sadly, Now, so we have these vulnerable parts that get hurt and then exiled. Yet there are also other lively and protective parts that don't fit in our families or maybe scare people around us. That's another type of exile. He calls them protectors in exile. And Robert Bly writes eloquently about these parts. Robert Bly, I'm going to read this here. A child running is a living globe of energy. You've seen children, they're so happy and self-expressed. They're happy. Children are usually happy. They're happy. If they get in a bad mood, it's very short-lived. They're curious, they're running, they're playing, they're absorbing information, they have a sense of awe and wonder, they're curious. Now, what happened to turn that loving, happy child into these cynical adults? What happened? So just remember, a child running is a living globe of energy. We had a ball of energy, all right, but one day we noticed that our parents didn't like certain parts of that ball. They said things like, "Can't you be still?" Or, "It isn't nice to try to kill your brother." Behind us, we have an invisible bag. And the parts of us our parents don't like, we, to keep our parents' love, put in the bag. By the time we get to school, our bag is quite large. Then our teachers have their say. Good children don't get angry over such little things. So we take our anger and put it in the bag. By the time my brother and I were 12 in Madison, Minnesota, we were known as the Nice Bly Boys. Our backs were already a mile long. When we put a part of ourselves in the bag, it regresses. It devolves toward barbarism. Suppose a young man seals a bag at 20 and then waits 15 or 20 years before he opens it again. What will he find? Sadly, the sexuality, the wildness, the impulsiveness, the anger, the freedom he put in have all regressed. They are not only primitive in mood, they are hostile to the person who opens the bag. The man who opens his bag at 45, or the woman who opens her bag, rightly feels fear. Every part of our personality that we do not love will become hostile to us. Okay, so that was from Robert Bly. So once you have a lot of exiles, you feel far more delicate, and the world seems far more dangerous because there's so many things or people and situations that could trigger them. And when an exile gets triggered and bursts out, it can feel like we're about to die, because it was exactly that scary or humiliating when the original event happened. And it can be the littlest thing, the way someone texts you, or looks at you, or doesn't respond to you, and someone doesn't get back to you in time, or it can be anything, and then you get triggered, and it feels like you're about to die. Or you get so angry, you just become a ball of fire, just lashing out. That's an exile that's triggered. Okay? Now, that's the exiles. Now let's talk about the managers. These parts of us, in order to keep our exiles contained, we have managers and we have firefighters. A manager preempts the exiles from ever becoming triggered. If I don't take any risks, I never have to get hurt. And a firefighter is activated after the exile is triggered. If I just tell you to fuck off, you'll leave me alone. Drinking can be that. Like, someone can, if someone is triggered, their exile is activated, they can go out and get drunk. That's they're in firefighter protector mode. Or you can just stay drunk all the time. That's your manager protector. So the manager is a protector, and we need our managers to protect us. We're all going to have them. Like, we're always going to have managers and firefighters, but for some people, they're just really strong, and they do keep us really stuck. Okay, now let's go into what the managers are. When you have a lot of exiles, and some people have more than others, okay, let's be clear. Other parts of you will have to leave their valuable roles to become protectors. Okay, it's like your adolescent parts are pressed into military or police service. So these are the different ways that your managers can show up. Some of them take on the role of controlling the outside world so that nothing triggering happens. I can kind of relate to that. If I don't get myself around annoying people, I won't get annoyed, But these controlling, okay, we're on managers now. These controlling, when the parts become controlling, they manage our relationships, appearance, and performance, often by yelling at us the way our parents or teachers once did. So we'll try harder or look better. These are also the parts that become our inner critics. Other parts take another approach and try to take care of everyone else while neglecting ourselves. We have the people pleaser. Other parts are hypervigilant. And other parts are intellectual and are skilled at keeping us out of our bodies. If I'm always thinking, I don't have to feel anything. If I'm always working, I don't have to feel anything. So there are many common roles these manager parts take. What they all have in common is they want to preempt the triggering of our exiles. They want to prevent our exiles from being triggered. So managers are one class of protectors. And they're usually very tired and stressed out. They're trying to keep the world safe for our exiles while keeping our exiles contained. They also have the ability to numb our bodies so we don't feel much, because if you don't feel, you don't get triggered. Managers are working all the time. Some of them never sleep. Other managers don't want us to feel good about ourselves for fear that we'll take risks and get hurt. They protect us by tearing us apart. They may let us try meditation or other spiritual practices, but usually just to reduce stress rather than really wanting to commune with the divine. Mainly, they want to keep us small because the safest place to be is below the radar. That reminds me of a quote. A ship in harbor is safe, but that's not where ships are meant to be. Something like that. That kind of reminds me too of people who don't want to bring up problems in their relationship because it scares them. They want to stay safe. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, okay? When we go through this, you'll see that you can't just like annihilate your protectors or just punish them. This is just a very delicate process of getting to know. As I'm reading through this, just kind of get curious and just we have to make friends and space for these parts. We don't solve this by punishing them more and being harsher on ourselves, okay? In general, managers don't like anything that takes us out of their control. They don't like anything that makes us open our hearts and feel confident or good about ourselves. On the other hand, there are also managers who want to belong and to please everyone. These are the parts that make us go regularly to church, for example, but they're not all that interested in directly experiencing the divine. Now let's talk about firefighters. Firefighters are the parts that get triggered. After an exile is triggered, they become activated. Despite how hard our managers work to prevent it, the world has a way of triggering our exiles at times. When that happens, it's a big emergency. To many of your protectors, experiencing the pain of your exiles feels like you might die. I personally have, for me, that comes up around my bookkeeping job when people text me, and I don't know who these people are, of course. And when they don't introduce themselves, I'm like, I don't know who you are. I get so triggered. I get so mad. I stay mad for like 10 seconds. I'm like, this loser, such a loser, what an idiot. Like, I get so mad. And I tried for years to figure out how to not get so mad. Sometimes I would just tell them they're a loser. I'm like, that is just, why do I get so mad? It's just words on a screen. So this is where I personally, or maybe somebody criticizes me, like one of my friends or someone confronts me with something and my whole body gets hot. I'm so activated. Like, I just feel like I gotta defend myself. I feel like I turn into a little kid. Have you ever had that happen? And it'll just be the smallest thing with someone who really cares about me. So and it's like, well, I'm having a nice peaceful day. And then I get this text or this person says something and suddenly I lose my inner peace. What is that? So this has fascinated me for so long. Or, some years ago, some guy I really liked, he didn't text me. I was so sad. And then he texted me and I'm so happy. I'm like, what is that? Shift in mood that's so sudden and so strong from just the littlest thing. I'm not even in any danger. So this has fascinated me for a decade. And so that's why I really like this, is I kind of finally feel like I found something to help me get to the root of understanding myself, frankly. And yeah, so I do know what it feels like. It's like when just this text, and they're not even saying anything bad. Like, I gotta like push this person away. I get this very strong reaction. Like, I gotta push this person away. And like, what is that? And it does sometimes feel like I'm I might die if I don't push them away, like my safety is at stake or something. But it really isn't. Okay, so that's a firefighter. But now for some people, it's not a text. They love getting text. Oh, good, a text. They have other things that trigger them that don't trigger me at all. Like someone being late. I know some people get extremely upset when someone is late. They feel like they're about to die. To me, I don't care if you're late. I really don't care. I'll just sit there on my phone and wait for you to get there. So we all have different exiles and that bring up the firefighter part. Most of us have a set of parts whose job it is to deal with these emergencies. Parts who will immediately go into action to put out that inner fire, the flames of emotion bursting out from that exiled place. In contrast to the managers who try to preempt anything that's going to trigger the exiles, these firefighter parts are activated after an exile has been triggered and desperately and often impulsively try to douse the flames of emotion, to use a substance to get us high, or to find a way to distract us until the fire burns itself out. So that's how people usually deal with it. You know, they get reactive, they try to get high, or they distract themselves. That's what we do. Depending on how much you fear your exiles, your firefighters will resort to desperate measures with little regard for the collateral damage to your health or your relationships. That's how you hear about these guys, these stalkers that end up, true crime is full of men who kill their wives or girlfriends after they've left. That is like a firefighter, and they don't care about their health or their relationships. They're just so angry. Those people have huge exiles, in my opinion. All they know is they have to get you away from these feelings right now or else. Sometimes their fears of your death are warranted because suicide is an option for some firefighters if other solutions don't work. Now, other people use spiritual bypassing. Spiritual bypassing is a type of firefighter. Many people come to meditation to escape their feelings. And I find the use of spiritual practices to transcend one's exiles to be rampant in the communities I treat. Your firefighters will get you addicted to the practice because it's a great solution for them. And your managers like you for doing it. In fact, people admire, envy your discipline, and see you as holy. Unlike managers, firefighters love going into the higher realms and losing control. The further from your pain, the better. In those higher realms, you can access a lot of pure self, which feels great, even though it doesn't heal anything, and can make exiles feel even more abandoned. Firefighters are desperate to find someone to make the exiles feel better, and often become recruiters who search for that special person or practice. They turn us into seekers who move from one meditation or spiritual leader to another, looking for the one that can permanently make those exiles feel better. Or, if they find one that seems to do the trick, they become zealous advocates and followers. Many people come to spiritual traditions with lots of exiles because of the intense trauma in their backgrounds, hoping for relief. Unfortunately, many spiritualities don't know what to do with people's traumas other than to help them bypass them. That is so true. Whether you're going to 12-step meetings, following a meditation practice, or going to church, none of these places know how to help people deal with their past pain or their traumas. They're just told to pray more, to meditate more, turn to their sponsor, read the 12-step book, pray, meditate, read the Bible. And if your life isn't better, you're just not doing it good enough. I have in my life met many meditators and spiritual people and monks and all this who are actually really not grounded. They're unable to hold jobs or maintain relationships. And some of them are actually like deeply troubled people. Some of them are actually, you know, toxic and perpetrators. And I think they turn to these things as a way, as trying to find a way out of their pain and their problems, as spiritual bypassing. You don't want to deal with your problems at all. That's your firefighter or your um, it's trying to make your exiles feel better. Now, for us to live in this culture and not see the suffering of its exiles or feel the outrage of what we're doing to the earth, we need distractions. So we have a lot of firefighter activities to help us numb the pain. Okay, so not to do so. That's where people use illegal drugs or prescription medicines, constantly available media entertainment, all-consuming jobs, and spiritual bypasses. Now, it's okay to use some of that. However, to the extent that people use it to numb their exiles, they're keeping themselves small and rigid and frozen. And I think that's why when I say that I like how men move, I think that the more that people have repressed their exiles, I think it shows up in people's bodies by being stiff, rigid, serious, angry looking, judgmental looking, controlling looking. I think we pick up signals in people. That's why I always, that now makes sense to where I'm like, I like people whose bodies like move freely and who look happy, because holding all that, repressing all these emotions takes a lot of work and makes people very serious, and they've repressed their joy and their aliveness and they become very rigid. Or even, a lot of people, I know people who have a thing called fibromyalgia. These people, every woman I know who has fibromyalgia had a traumatic childhood, or migraines. So it's, in my opinion, it's all repressed trauma, repressed pain. If you read books like The Body Keeps the Score, any kind of trauma work, they do say that stress and many illnesses are caused by trauma. And these are all unhealed parts that are frozen in time, that are wounded, and that are impacting our health, our relationships, everything, like I said at the beginning of this video. Now, he says here, I learned many years ago the importance of respecting the protectors and their right to protect the system and not be pushed out of the way. It's very, very important. These burdened inner systems, your exiles, are a sensitive environment, and we need to approach and visit them accordingly. Your protectors have spent a lifetime trying to keep you and everyone else away from your exiles. So they need to be consulted first and convinced there's a good reason to let you go there. We don't go to exiles without permission from protectors. Now, when we talk about these managers and firefighters, these are not describing you or the parts themselves. They're just the roles that your parts were thrust into because of what happened in your childhood. They're maintained by the burdens and where they're frozen in the past. When they're retrieved, unburdened, and released from these roles, these parts become something quite different and always valuable. For example, a manager part might just want to lie on the beach. Instead of managing and controlling, once it releases its managing part, it may just want to lie on the beach. And the firefighter part that was just reacting and distracting might just want to use its energy for something healthy and playful rather than on getting you drunk. Now I'm going to actually put that in this video. How can you find a protector? So I think the first part is to be like, people are probably going, what are my exiles? We don't know what they are because they're so hidden away. We don't know. But it's easy to find our protector. So here's an exercise that he has in this book on working with a challenging protector. So I'm going to read this to you, and you can just listen to it now, or just replay this, or get the book and go through it yourself. Exercise, working with a challenging protector. This exercise can prove challenging, especially if you're new to internal family systems work. If that's the case for you, just do your best to get to know the parts that aren't so ready. Take a second and get comfortable, setting up like you would if you were going to meditate. Think of a part of you that really bothers you or gets in your way, one that you have a lot of shame about, or one you might be afraid of. Take a second to think of one. What you're really looking for is more of a protective part rather than a real vulnerable one. Some people immediately focus on their inner critics for this exercise. So if you're having trouble finding one, that usually does the job. As you focus on the part, notice where you find it in your body or around your body. And while you focus on that place, notice how you feel toward this part. Because of what you're looking for, you're probably going to have some strained feelings toward it. Now place this part of you in a contained room in there. That will help other parts of you to drop their weapons and feel a little safer. Make it a comfortable room, but one that it can't get out of and that you can see through a window. And let all these other parts that have issues with it know that for the duration of the exercise, it's going to stay contained. So ask them to relax just a little bit so you can get to a point of curiosity toward the one in the room. See if they're willing to do that. If they're not willing to separate, that's okay. You can spend the rest of the time just getting to know them and their fears of this other part or what issues they have with it. If you can get to a point of curiosity or any kind of openness to the part that's in the room, the protective part, then let it know that and see what it wants you to know while it stays contained. See if you can communicate with it through the window. What does it want you to know about itself? What's it afraid would happen if it stepped out of its role of protecting you? If it answered that question, then see if it's possible to extend some appreciation to it for at least trying to protect you. And see how old it thinks you are. If it thinks you're a different age than you actually are, then go ahead and update it. Tell it how old you are. See how it reacts. Now ask this part some version of the following question. If you could change or heal what you're protecting so that it wasn't really an issue anymore, and you were freed from this responsibility of protection and could do something else, what would you like to do? In other words, if the part were totally liberated from its role of protecting, what else would it choose to do? After it answers that question, ask what it needs from you in the future. Then check with your other parts before we stop. Just see how they're reacting as they witness this conversation you had with the protector part. When the time feels right, I invite you to finish up in there, thanking your parts for anything they let happen, letting them know this isn't your last visit. Taking deep breaths again, if that helps, shift your focus back outside.